Okay, and Luke, we especially need to have our secretary here.
All right, and who is your secretary?
It's Annette.
All righty, I'm not sure how she's connecting. I have a city number on the call-in line, so let me screen her and I'll see if that's her listening in. All right, Annette is on the phone, so she should be able to hear us now.
Yes, I can hear you.
So Luke, it looks like there's just a chat item from the applicant's representative. I don't know if you just open video up to the DRC members, city staff. She was asking if we could see her, so I don't know how that process works for.
Okay, I apologize, Kelly, start over again. I'm trying to screen calls at the same time.
I'm sorry. The applicant's representative is Frances, and it looks like she's logged on to the webinar. I don't know if you are opening up her to be on video as well, or if they're just using the phone lines to comment.
I see Frances as an attendee. Should she be in the room?
We can't see her.
All right, I will promote her to a panelist. All right. Who else are we waiting for from DRC?
Mark Darras and Emily Baranek.
I think I possibly have Mark as an attendee. It looks like I will. Mark, this is Luke. Is this Mark DeRees that I just allowed to talk?
Yes, it is.
All right, I'm going to make you a panelist, and you should be able to talk at your leisure. And who else from DRC are we expecting?
Emily?
I don't see Emily. She might be called. Oh, I have her on the phone line. Give me 1 second.
Hi, Mark.
Hi there. I was having a little difficulty getting everything connected right.
We see you.
Yeah, I can now.
Yeah.
All right, are we waiting for any other DRC members?
Well, just Emily, but she's here by phone, correct?
Correct. Yeah, she just called in, so she's in.
Okay, very good. Then I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the DRC to order. Annette, could you please give us a roll call, please?
Person?
Was that me? Dwayne, yes?
Thank you. Committee Member Darras?
Here.
Committee Member Newsom?
Here.
Committee Member Baranek,
Here.
Chairperson Fonzie,
Here.
all present. Thank you.
Thank you. And do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
I so move.
Motion by Heather Newsom, I believe, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll second.
And that was Mark?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Let's move on to public comment, and this would be on any items. Hello?
Hi, Roberta. I just wanted to interject. Phil is trying to join the link another way, and he is requesting that we just give him a couple minutes maybe before we head too far down into the meeting.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and take care of the business items and then we'll pause. So let's go ahead and open it up to any public comment on any item that is not on today's agenda over which we have jurisdiction. Do we have anything, Luke, from anybody that is speaking on any item not on today's agenda? Okay, I think we may have a little problem, and we will wait. Luke, are you there?
He's muted, it looks like.
Okay.
He might be fielding some phone calls coming in. I know we heard a lot from the neighborhood. There might be quite a few calls coming in.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the consent calendar, which is basically approval of the draft minutes of April 29th. Do I have any changes to this or a motion for approval of the consent calendar?
No changes. I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Okay, motion by
second
Heather
that.
Newsom. Second by Dwayne Anderson. All in favor of approval of the consent calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, we've approved the consent calendar and we're waiting for public comment for Luke.
Phil, I see you in the meeting. Are you able to hear us and talk?
I think I can finally get in.
All right, perfect.
Sorry about the echo.
No, that's on my side right now.
Okay. Oh, finally, that for some reason the links weren't working. I apologize.
You're there, Phil, we can see you.
Oh, you can. Good. How do I look? Okay.
Well, we see the top of your head.
We can only see the top of your head.
Let me see if the video works here for some
You
reason.
still have hair though, so I think you're doing good.
Oh, jeez. I can't see myself. The video. Oh, there it is. Oh, good. Okay. All right.
Did you forget the booster for your seat?
I know I'm short, but I'm not that short. All right. There we go. Oh, finally. I'm sorry.
Okay, I don't know if you could hear us, Phil, but we've just approved the consent calendar and the agenda. We are waiting for Luke to see if there's any public comment on items not on today's agenda.
Yes, I did hear all that. I was sitting there, I was listening to it on the phone, but nobody could hear me. So I was kind of texting Kelly going, help, I'm stuck in a box. Okay, good. We're okay now. All right. Good deal.
Luke, I don't know if you were listening, but we're seeing if there's any public comment for items not on the agenda today.
Kelly, Francis is chatting some more about additional people to be brought in.
Okay, I think that Luke,
I don't envy Luke today.
no, it's a difficult job, which is why he's the head man and in charge. He does it the best.
So on my screen, I only have myself, Heather, Roberta, and Kelly.
So I think with the webinars, it's just a little different format and we can't always see everybody at the same time.
Okay.
So how are we? I'm sorry, I'm still screening. We got a lot of callers today to make some comment. Are we, am I missing something?
Yeah, Luke, we're asking for public comment on any item not on today's agenda. In other words, not talking about the mini storage. So if you are screening the calls, and there's anybody that just wants to talk to us about something else, we could go ahead and take public comment now or close it out.
So far, all the comments are for the item on the agenda.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to say no public comment unless I hear from you, and we will let them in at a later time. Okay, Luke?
That sounds good.
Very good. So I'm going to close public comment, and we'll move this on to our item today, and this would be preliminary design review of a mini storage facility, storage space, workshop, and co-working office space at 11450 Viejo Camino and 11505 El Camino Real. Kelly, staff report.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to just give a little preamble too before Kelly starts, just on the basic background, because I know that we need to probably provide a little bit of clarity on the DRC's purpose and action real quick on this one, because it is a little bit confusing. And really what the applicant is after right now is a very preliminary review of an updated design. But it's really difficult for us to be able to separate land use from design. As we recall, this project went before the city council, and the main issue there was the conditional use permit and the land use, which being mini storage. The council found that mini storage use was not compatible with the general plan. And so now we're faced with looking at a revised design. And the question is, can you design yourself out of a land use compatibility issue? And we at the council, we found that we couldn't design ourselves out of a land use compatibility issue. But again, it causes us to look back at what the municipal code says about the DRC's review and purpose. And I know in your staff report, we said, hey, this is limited to design. But sometimes design can be a very wide-ranging topic that can get into and touch on land use issues. And the DRC really is established to look at those issues and look at the entire general plan and the goals and policies. So up on your screen now, you see that section of the municipal code 9-2.107 and the DRC's purpose. And we should probably just take a little time to reflect on that, because it can help narrow and focus our attention on the project today. And let's just kind of go through those. Really, we are charged with looking at development that meets the following objectives: maintaining the rural character and identity, enhancing the appearance and character of the city by looking at architecture and site plans for all different projects, ensuring that development's compatible with surrounding uses and improvements by requiring designs that provide appropriate visual appearance and plans to mitigate neighborhood impacts. And then if we can go to that next slide, it really talks about the criteria that we need to take into consideration when we make recommendations. And we can recommend conditions of approval here. And essentially, a lot of it has to do with the goals and policies established by the general plan and the appearance review manual. But in the end, we need to provide whether the proposed development plan is compatible with and not detrimental to the surrounding land uses and improvements, and the project provides appropriate visual appearance. Now again, today, this project isn't being recommended to go anywhere. The applicant is simply looking for a preliminary design review. They have not submitted a conditional use permit application that would enable them to proceed to Planning Commission for a review of the land use and a recommendation from the DRC. So it's a bit narrow in scope, and that's why we designed the staff report that way, to say, hey, we're just looking at design. But you can look beyond design to look at these issues that you're charged with in accordance with the municipal code. So when we go to the question of next steps, what's next? Where do we go from here? That's kind of a good question. We should talk with the applicant. Hey, what's your intent? There's a couple things on this application that are going to require more than just a conditional use permit, potentially general plan amendment, potentially zoning adjustments. So they're wanting to get a first look at that. And I don't know there's a whole lot we can tell them, but what we can say is that we know that this city council did find that the land use itself, the primary land use, mini storage, was not going to work on this site. That hasn't changed. And so going forward, the applicant needs to understand that, even though we're looking at the overall design. With that, I'm going to let Kelly continue with the actual details of their current submittal and take a look at that. And I can answer more questions on this level later.
Okay, Kelly?
Thank you. So we just really have a brief preservation of an overview of the project. As Phil mentioned, it's in sort of a concept stage to get a preliminary look at it. For those who don't recall or maybe joining us for the first time, the project's located in the public zoning district, public general plan designation. It's bordered by both El Camino Real and Viejo Camino. It's currently comprised of 2 properties, and the development spans those properties. This is an aerial view of the site. One of the sites has an existing single-family residence on it. The other is vacant and has been used for grazing of animals. As we saw when the last project came through, there is a seasonal, ephemeral kind of water drainage that goes through the property, and the property does contain some wetland features as well. So in concept, they've submitted an approximately almost 60,000 square foot mini storage facility, a 2,000 square foot workshop of some kind, and then an approximately 3,500 square foot sort of co-working office space. And there's 5 total buildings proposed for the site. So the site footprint did shrink from the last time we saw this project. So here's the conceptual design that they have. You can see the mini storage buildings towards the center of the site and around the edges. And then there's that co-working office space and workshop at the top end of the property. This kind of gives us some idea of what in concept they're looking to do, with some block walls along the realigned creekway, some naturalized vegetation, some agrarian style architecture, and some wrought iron fencing around the edge of the property. In terms of the building design, their concept is contemporary agrarian. They've got some dark ribbed metal siding as well as metal roofing, some gable roof forms in a very simple form, similar to sort of a more rural agrarian style, and some roof features that give it some added architectural interest. So these are the 4 elevations, sort of looking from the street or outside of the property in. So you can see that the transparent fencing, which of course will have landscaping around it in their concept design, and then the buildings as you see them stepping down throughout the site. These are some of the materials that they're thinking of if they move forward with the project. So in terms of next steps, as Phil mentioned, this is a preliminary design direction, compatibility direction for the neighborhood and design issues associated with that. If they do move forward, they'll need the conditional use permit, which will include both the use and the creek setback exception. They'll also potentially need a zone text change to allow the co-working space into the public zone, or some sort of general plan amendment and zone map change to change the zoning designation of the site to allow for both those uses. Also needs a lot line adjustment to move the lot lines over to accommodate the development as they've proposed it, and environmental analysis. So this is a preliminary review. The DRC will have another opportunity to review it if it does move forward in a more detailed plan. So I know Phil went over this a little bit in terms of review items. They're really looking for some conceptual feedback about the aesthetics of the project and how those relate to neighborhood compatibility. If the DRC does not believe that they can design their way into a compatible situation, then direction should be given to the applicant to look at some different uses of the site. So that does conclude staff's presentation. I know the applicant's team is here and available for any questions as well as staff.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. I think I'll take some questions from the committee members first, and then we'll go on to the applicant. So are there any questions for Kelly or for Phil?
I just have one quick question, and it's just to sort of review what was the incompatible nature of the project by the City Council's decision. I don't recall exactly what was specific that made it incompatible.
So that was incompatible with the neighborhood in terms of placing a mini storage between residential and higher density residential on a site that has kind of a rural character and by a park. And so that's the essential thing. It was basically a storage type, semi-industrial appearing or semi-industrial land use being in that location. So purely incompatibility with the neighborhood was the #1 issue that did not allow the City Council to make all the findings for approval.
And so incompatible because this is perceived to be more of an industrial type of a project and that makes it incompatible with the residents. I just want to understand the specifics. Is that where you're headed or what you're saying?
Yeah, basically a mini storage land use not being compatible with the neighborhood, not being compatible with what's in the vicinity, such as, for example, yeah, you've got churches, you've got a park, you've got residential. Does it fit within that framework of land uses that surround it? And I think it was felt that these types of land uses are better off in a service commercial or industrial zone, an area like that.
Okay, thank you, Phil.
And just to reiterate what Phil has said, Mark, we had to make some findings for the conditional use permit to go through, and we were not able to make all the findings, particularly regarding orderly development in the area as well.
Okay, thank you.
Dwayne?
So what we're talking about was my main concern right away. And so I guess my question is, should we basically stipulate at this point that the findings of the City Council are essentially a fact in this thing? So then we have to figure out, and I guess my question is, so what is it that we're looking at to figure out that goes around those findings? Because we could spend hours here retrying the whole thing, and I don't see that as being a good use of our time.
Yeah,
in that regard.
It is a new project, so we have to look at it as a new project. So we can't rely solely on, okay, we made these findings, so anything you do here, we look at the same way. It certainly lives in that shadow, but it is a new project. So you need to ask yourself again, does this design meet the objectives that the DRC is charged with in terms of its compatibility with the general plan and ensuring that the development's compatible with the surrounding uses? Can a design get there that's compatible regardless of the land use? So you've got to ask yourself those questions. And it is challenging. It's a challenging topic when we're sort of picking this up again. And maybe you can, maybe you can't, make that particular determination. But I think in this case, the applicant's just asking for early feedback. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge. I think that if we were faced with looking at the general plan findings for a conditional use permit, if we go forward with that route, we're going to end up in the same loop, most likely, because it is the predominant land use is storage. But still, we have to review it in a new light as a new project and give it the benefit of the doubt.
Okay, so Phil, have you talked to legal counsel? Are we getting into any lawsuit arenas that if we go ahead and give guidance regarding the appearance, since the city council has already said it's basically that land use is incompatible?
We have spoken with legal counsel. We do need to review this project for compatibility with the general plan and in accordance with our DRC standards. Legally, we're not bound. You can't look back at the previous action and say, since we made this action, we're going to make that action on every single project. You still have to give it the review as though it's a new project. And as long as we do that and run through our normal goals and policies of our general plan that we would for any project, that's all we're asking you to do. But certainly that previous finding, making that previous finding does cast a shadow because it's still a very similar project. So we have to, remind ourselves, hey, we still potentially have that issue. But today we just really have to look at the design, hear from the neighborhood, and take a look at those particular general plan policies and issues that could again be a potential here. It's a challenge.
Okay, I can't see everybody on my screen either. So Heather Newsom, do you have any questions for staff?
Yes, I do.
You
Sorry.
keep raising your hand.
I know. I was like, nobody sees me raising my hand.
I see you raising your
I
hand.
was gonna call on you.
Well, thank you. I was actually waiting. I guess my biggest question that I have is probably more for the applicant, not the staff, is what are their next steps? Because if it's only a design analysis or us reviewing their design, but they're not taking any next steps, how are we supposed to give constructive feedback in that area? Obviously, we've already have precedent in that area. New design is being presented. We have already ruled on a mini storage going in there. If this was a totally different participant, we'd be having the same conversation up front, is that how is it compatible with the neighborhood? So asking for us just to review, I can't objectively review a design on something that I know doesn't fit the compatibility. So what does that limit us, and how does that control this meeting going forward as to what we hear?
Phil, do you want to take that?
Well, yeah, it's a difficult question. We have to give the applicant an opportunity to review. And so I think the thought here is, can they potentially modify this design enough and put enough other land uses in here to introduce a level of compatibility that tips the scale? I think that is what the applicant is thinking in this scenario. And so that's our main question. Could they have a mini storage here that's small enough in scale, shrouded in other land uses to the greatest extent possible to get there? Or can they not? Or is it still predominantly a mini storage project and that's still a compatibility issue? So that's the question of the day.
Okay, I think we got it. I'm going to call on Emily. And Emily, did you have any comments?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Then let's go ahead and open this up to the applicant or the applicant's representatives to tell us about the changes in the project.
It looks like Francis is muted. Oh, there we go.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 Okay, well, thank you so much for all of you taking the time to do this today. I know that it's extremely difficult with all the COVID restrictions, so thanks for being up to the challenge. And since there's been some discussion about the whole shadow compatibility, one thing that wasn't really brought up at the last meeting, and at that time I was just an observer, I was not on the team, is that you currently have 6 storage facilities in Atascadero. And of those 6 locations, there are 6 facilities, they are at 5 locations. And of those 5 locations, 3 of them are permitted with a CUP. 2 of them are in a zone that does not allow with a CUP or by right to have storage. And the final storage facility, the 6th one, is in a zone that's allowed by right. And of these 6 storage facilities, 4 of them are built immediately adjacent to single family and multifamily neighborhoods that are built out. And 2 of the storage facilities are immediately adjacent to land that is zoned for residential. So I just think that that's information that wasn't presented through the staff report. It wasn't presented by the applicant's prior team. And I think that it needs to be considered in context, because there continues to be well, it's not compatible, yet basically every storage facility you have in the city indeed is next to a residential neighborhood. So with that, we are fortunate to have the architect who actually knows about design. I'm just a planner. So I'd like Locke to kind of walk you through the design considerations. He was the architect on the last facility, which was also quite lovely. And just kind of explain what process he went through to reduce this project. And you know, in redesigning it, we feel we were responsive to some of the things we heard about business incubation and needs in the community to create business opportunities and employment, and how we have worked that into our design as well. Locke, are you on?
Me? Can you guys hear me?
Not very well.
Okay. Is that better?
Oh, just a little bit. Could you speak louder?
I'm going to turn my Bluetooth off for a moment. Is that better?
Yes, that's a little better.
Okay. My name is Locke Sutterquest. I'm with LSA Architects. I'm the architect that's been working on this self-storage project. And I just wanted to go over the changes that we made to the project based on the feedback that we heard in the September 10th meeting. And Kelly did actually a good job explaining those changes, but I'd like to recap. I think the most dramatic change we made was we reconfigured the waterway through the site. So originally there was a lot of discussion about the 90-degree angle that the water was taking and being rerouted on a linear path adjacent, or directly to the south along the site to the existing culvert. And so we decided to completely scrap that concept and just create an organic pathway for that water to traverse through the site. And in doing that, we applied a 40-foot right-of-way for the water and reconfigured the buildings as they sit on the site to accommodate that waterway. That waterway still will be planted with native vegetation and rockscape to create an organic creek-looking waterway. The site will be fortified with a stamped retaining wall that'll be screened with landscaping on that side. The split face block security wall around the perimeter was a big concern last time. So we eliminated all the buildings with the exception of one building along the perimeter to eliminate that articulated block wall and replace it with a wrought iron fence. And that wrought iron fence is still a backdrop to dense landscaping around the perimeter, kind of a green belt. With the new site configuration, we were able to add additional landscaping on site to kind of break up the on-site hardscape and building layout. The buildings themselves were reconfigured to try to conceal all of the roll-up doors, or most of the roll-up doors, from the public's view. So we created passageways through the building, and the roll-up doors are accessed through those walkways in the buildings, so that the buildings themselves have more of an agricultural storage building appearance rather than a self-storage, your traditional mini storage building which is kind of a small linear scale with roll-up doors, consistently all the way across the facades of the building. There was one resident that mentioned trying to reconfigure building A to do something for the community. So we reduced the size of building A, increased parking up at building A, and converted it to a co-op workspace for the surrounding community. The buildings themselves are kind of a contemporary agrarian style architecture. They're meant to emulate ag storage buildings or a barn or a farmhouse. The color palette is a darker color palette meant to emulate like barn wood or aged wood that blends itself with the surrounding landscape a little bit better. And we have clear story windows on the tops of the buildings that kind of give it that older historical look. The proportions of the windows are small, providing kind of clear story illumination to those interior spaces. So those are the primary changes that we made to the building based on the feedback from the previous meeting. And if you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
And Locke, I'd like to add one other thing about Building A. There was also a conference room added that could be used by really anyone in the community with reservations. So it would not only be available to the people that are there with their businesses or as part of their incubator space, but it would also be available to the community at large as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Locke or for Francis? I can't see hands. Heather Newsom, did you have a question?
No, I did not.
Okay, Emily, questions?
Not at this time, no.
Thank you. Mark, questions?
No, I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Dwayne, how about you?
I'm good.
Okay. I wonder if Kelly could put up any additional drawings so we could see some of these features that they've changed, the block wall, the security fencing, the additional landscaping, the layout of the buildings and the appearance of the buildings.
Yeah, so we just have a very conceptual plan set. So the site plan, I think, was intended to show if they move forward, the types of things they would integrate into the project design. So we can see sort of the transparent wrought iron fencing around, and we can sort of see a preliminary landscape where they have increased some of the buffer between the right-of-way and the buildings. On the right-hand side, the second picture down is the block wall that they are thinking of using adjacent to the realigned creek channel. And then in concept, how they hope to plan to make the creek channel look like a more natural state with a rock bottom and some landscaping and vegetation around the creek banks. So that's the information that we have.
Thank you, Kelly. Dwayne, you had a question?
Yeah, concerning the block wall, is that just going to be like a solid block wall, or is it going to be terraced? I think just a design feature I wonder about.
I don't know that we have enough information to really look at that. If you look at the second section down on the left-hand side of the screen, you can kind of see the dashed line that goes down. That's where the creek channel is off of that Camino elevation. So it does look like it comes straight down from the building pad area and then goes across and comes up at a slope on the adjacent side.
And I can speak to that a little bit. So the way that we want to design that wall, I mean, we have a wall that goes down to, the compacted soil so that we can retain what's on site. But in that channel, there'll be berms on either side with, boulders placed and native vegetation planted like willows or something like that, that stabilize the soil to reduce the height of that wall and eliminate, what you actually see from the waterway.
So there would be like some growth of that would over time create the appearance that the wall is less imposing. And
yeah, there'd be soil compacted against the wall, and then there'd be planting and boulder placement along that wall,
Okay.
which would reduce the height, in some areas to 3 feet, other areas would be 4 feet, 5 feet, depending on the landscape scenario, adjacent to the waterway up against the wall.
Okay.
Okay,
I have another question on that block
go ahead.
for the architect. I love the design. I think the buildings are beautiful. The drainage channel concerns me a little bit. The blocks that you have in mind specifically, what are the dimensions of those? Are those residentially scaled blocks, or are those the larger, more, Caltrans sized blocks?
They're the larger Caltrans sized blocks, and what they're meant to not necessarily be a design feature, the more like the foundation of the site. So, in our minds, the scale of the block is appropriate considering they're, retaining the perimeter of the site, and there's only, a small portion of the block that's exposed.
Any other questions?
Not at this time.
Go ahead. Heather Newsom, was there a question?
No, I said no questions at this time.
Okay, I thought I heard something there. Hard to see. Okay, Kelly, I was wondering if you could put up the previous slide that showed the roof lines of the buildings. I wanted to see what it would look like from El Camino Real if you were going down, or if you lived at Dove Creek, what would you see?
Sure. So the El Camino elevation is the bottommost elevation. So you can see that sort of building A, and then the other adjacent building is more of a 2-story design feature. And then the buildings drop down to 1 story as you go, I guess, more towards the south of the site, towards where the creek would be.
Okay, and so I'm trying to remember if there was any grade changes in the lot, but I believe there are. So the building at the furthest right at the bottom would be down further at the lower end, and it would go up the hill, or vice versa.
Yeah, it does look like the lower portion is sort of to the right on the southmost end of the site. Again, for access, it's not going to be completely terraced just because of the dry bile access issue, but it is slightly sloped.
Mm-hmm. And as far as their landscaping at this point, we don't know, but I'm going to assume there would be landscaping on the edge that would be seen by El Camino in particular.
It does look like their concept plan shows a fairly significant setback, although I cannot tell necessarily where the right-of-way lines are in their concept plan, but they do show landscaping along El Camino.
Okay, because in reading the report, it said about 40,000 square feet of landscaping, almost an acre, which I thought was actually rather a lot to be putting in, but I couldn't really see it.
Well, any area that's not covered in hardscape or building would be landscaped. And so we calculate that area, and that's the number that you see in that chart. So the idea is that we would densely landscape the perimeter with the wrought iron fence as the backdrop, and then the buildings are set back further to kind of reduce the scale from a pedestrian level or a vehicle level of the buildings on the site. And regarding the elevation change, Building A, the parking lot up at Building A is 10 feet higher than the lowest driveway that's adjacent to Building D.
Okay. And Building A is shown on the slide before us as the building up at the top left. Is that correct?
Yep. Yes, correct.
Thank you.
It's the building that shows the proposed co-working and workshop.
Right. Okay, and one last question regarding access to the site. There was some discussion at the city council area about having walking or pedestrian access that could take people from Paloma Park over to the other park, or Paloma Creek area to the park. And I was wondering, is Dove Creek and Paloma going to be linked in some way by a pedestrian path, or this will be completely fenced off with no pedestrian access?
So on the proposed plans, it does look like they have accommodated room for a pedestrian pathway from Viejo Camino to El Camino Real along that southernmost property line. I do know from the last project that we looked at that had a similar opportunity, that would need to be looked at by our Public Works Department a little bit more in detail to make sure that they're not encouraging a mid-block unsafe crossing where that pathway comes out. So that if they move forward, that would be something we would look into further.
Very good, thank you. All right, if there's no other questions, I'm going to open it up to the public. First, Annette, do you have anything that we need to submit into the record in terms of emails?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I had already emailed you numerous letters that all the DRC members should have received. I don't know if, Roberta, you wanted to make the determination if you wanted those read into the record today, or if you're going to ask that those, that we read those, or that those are just going to be part of the public record. That's your call. So I wasn't sure, but we don't have anything new as of right now that has come into the DRC inbox.
Okay. I'd like to just have this placed into the public record, but I would ask Annette if you could just look at them very quickly and tell us how many are in favor and how many are opposed.
Okay, so the first one is Brian Sears, and he's opposed. The second one is Max Zappas, and he is in support. The third one is Richard and Sally Smith. And let me see, I had not read all of these. I have studied, not a good fit for this neighborhood, so opposed. Stephen Davis, and he is opposed. The next one is from Bill Murrieta, and he is opposed. The next one is from Chris Towers. Let's see here, and he said he is, it is not a good fit for the community, so he is opposed. The next one is Janet Murrieta, and she is strongly opposed. And the next one is from, or the last one I should say, is from Jack and Barbara Bridwell, and they are requesting that the Design Review Committee come to the same conclusion, denying the project. And that's it.
Thank you, Annette. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right. And did the applicant get a copy of these emails as well?
Not to my knowledge. They were emailed out to the DRC.
Okay.
Unless Kelly sent them, I'm not sure.
No, they came in over just the last few days, and we received even more today. So they are part of the project file that the applicant can come in and request to look at, or request to be emailed in our different COVID times. But they did sort of come in. They've been filtering in at the last minute.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, then let's make sure that the applicant knows, if they're listening, that they are available for them to review. I'd like to open this up to public comment on the phone. Luke, can you take us through the calls, please?
Yes, I can. So our first caller is Clyde Snyder.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, hello, good afternoon, Chairman Fonzie and members of the Design Review Committee. I live in Paloma Creek area, and I spoke to council and the committee last year in opposition to the project, and I remain opposed. I had three segments I was going to talk about. Number two is the history, but I think that's been covered pretty well. Again, Phil Dunsmore does an excellent job in synthesizing it. My first concern was with the timeliness of the notification. I know most of us didn't receive any notice about it until late last week about this hearing, and the actual agenda with the planning was not posted until Monday afternoon, which gave people about a day to get their comments in on time, and that amount of time to 48 hours to study it. So I don't know what the policy of the Design Review Committee is, but I think a lot of people, you're getting a lot of objections without people really knowing what it's about. People are leading their lives, so they don't have time to stop, drop everything, and review a new proposal that's just landed on their doorstep. I do give props to the architect. I have friends that are architects, and I think they've done a nice job of paring things down, but it's the old adage about a new lipstick on the slimmed down pig. It's still basically a new storage unit. The third issue that I wanted to talk about is the zoning. Now, a lot of this is predicated on a zoning change or amendments to the code. Here with the text change, there's some various descriptions of it, and with the presumption that will, in order for the plan with the workshop and the co-working to go forward, those changes are going to be need to be made. The applicant also seems to put a lot of emphasis on future changes in the general plan and zoning. I'd be interested in when the zoning is going to be revisited by the city. And just lastly, as you know, many of you know, the property has been listed by a very large commercial property company out of Los Angeles. The 2 lots are listed for $1.8 million. And the executive summary for that company says it's open for a number of uses and has been identified by the city for current general plan amendment zone changes to residential. And on that site map, you'll notice the lot that's not being developed says future multifamily residential. So again, my point, a lot of this project is predicated on zoning changes, and secondarily, the essence of the project is not really changed. It's still mini storage units, although it looks like much more attractive than it was before. So I remain opposed to it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Next.
Next, we have Janet Murrieta. Oh.
First of all, I would like to start off with a comment regarding the initial statement made by the applicant's planner regarding all storage facilities that are basically in the middle of residential neighborhoods. That actually is not true. The one storage facility that is down from the Chalk Mountain store does face a set of condos, but it also has businesses around it and is adjacent to the freeway. So it's not really a residential area. I don't consider that to be a true statement. Also, the facilities on the El Camino Real side of where Chalk Mountain is are not surrounded by residential properties at all. And the few facilities that are down on Traffic Way are across the street from a few residential properties, but they're also starting into that industrial area down Traffic Way. So again, I don't really see where these are dominant residential areas. So I just wanted to comment on that. I do respect the process of having to look at this project as a new project because there have been changes made. I don't think it changes the fact that this is still the majority of a mini storage facility, which does not meet the findings that were set forth by the City Council the last time this went around. So that's really all I have to say at this point. Hopefully it will not go any further and we won't have to keep going down this road. My last comment is I am totally strongly opposed to this project. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Murrieta. Next.
Next, we have Rosalind. I didn't catch her last name.
Jancourt.
Say it again, please.
I live next door to the lot, and I do not see how that canal going through down the middle is going to hold all that water that goes through there, because that whole area fills up like a lake, and so does the area that you decided not to build on. All of it does, and it can't get out through the bridge any faster than it's already going. So, and a canal like it is up the street will not hold that much water. Also, am I on?
Yes, you are on. And,
okay.
And before you go,
got another call coming.
Can you hear me?
Also, I agree with the same thing. It's just just putting a prettier face on the storage unit, that it does not fit in our neighborhood, and there are several storage units that are not in the middle of a family neighborhood and across the street from a park. That just doesn't fit to me. And I think it also affects the natural, even though there's no water there right now, it still has an underground creek that goes through there. And it affects the frog population, and which keeps the insects down in the neighborhood. I just want to say I'm strongly opposed to it. And thank you.
Thank you. And Luke, could you get her name again, please?
It's Rosalind Rancour. R-A-N-C-O-U-R. I live on the property line, and I've seen the water come up and almost hit my house. And before I live here, I've seen it get up to the Jack's driveway. That's a lot of water.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rancour.
Okay. Rancour.
Rancour. Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Our next caller is Marlene and Dictor.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello. I'm just going to keep it short and say I'm opposed.
Okay. Did you have any questions or concerns in particular?
Well, I think it's completely inappropriate for our area. It's a whole different kind of a population coming in here. So it's not residential, and putting businesses in or offices just makes it worse to me.
Very good.
So,
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your good work, everybody.
Thank you. Next.
We just had somebody call back in. Let me see if they would like to talk.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. This is Sally Dexter Smith.
Hi, Sally. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to mention that, again, that this is a public use acreage. And I would love to see something like a swimming pool for the public use. We are in such hot area that during the summer, I would love to just go jump in a pool somewhere. There's not one around. The City Council has already determined that this was not a good fit for the neighborhood. And also they don't want to create a trend that could negatively impact other public use parcels in the future. For instance, on the other side of the church, the Methodist church there's that whole big area that is also public use land, and we want to be careful about what we put in the land we're talking about, because it will impact what goes into the next one. I did have one question for the architect about the use of that workshop. Is that supposedly for public use as well as the co-working space, or is that a workshop for repairs at the facility?
Okay, Sally, we'll get an answer for you after all the public speaking is done.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any more, Luke?
It looks like that is all of our callers that are wishing to make a comment today.
Okay, very good. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and bring this back for a couple answers from staff, either Kelly or from Phil. Mr. Snyder had some questions about the notification. Did this get publicly notified, or was this posted as a...
Yeah, so the meeting was publicly notified. We did expand the notification area to include everybody that the council and DRC and Planning Commission wanted to see noticed for the last project on this parcel. And so we did, there were about 1,500 notifications. We did have to work with a private vendor to get those out. And so some of them may have been delayed in getting out, and we do apologize for that. That was not our intent at all. But it was a neighborhood noticed meeting.
Okay. Very good. And regarding zoning, he mentioned that there was going to be a change, at least in terms of the sales documents, to multifamily on a portion of the site. Do you know anything about that?
No, so we did just last night look at our draft housing element to send to the state. Part of the conclusion of that document was that the city did not need to rezone additional properties to meet our RENA numbers. So we are not looking at any rezonings as part of the housing element update. We will be looking citywide at land use patterns and rezoning as part of our general plan update, which is slated to start. Maybe Phil can better answer that at the end of this year, beginning of next year. And we will be looking throughout the city for potential opportunities for rezoning and different land use patterns, but nothing has been identified at this time.
Thank you. And could you give us an update on when we'll be doing that housing element?
So the housing element draft got submitted to the state, or will be submitted to the state shortly, and will be adopted by the end of the year. And then the general plan, citywide general plan update process will start shortly after that exercise is completed.
So sometime in the next year or two, would you say?
We would start the general plan update process, and those general plan updates, you know, generally take about 3 years to complete. So they are a fairly lengthy process with environmental review and public participation.
Okay.
2 years, hopefully, not 3. I like to
Not
say
3,
2.
2.
I don't know.
Going for 2. I think our last one took 3, but it was a pretty big one, so.
Okay, and there would be extensive public comment during that period.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of
Very good.
public involvement.
Okay, and Rosalind had some concerns about environmental issues for the property, too much water, and the frog population and others. Would there be an environmental review that would be done along with any creek changes?
Yeah, so if they do submit a formal application, they'll be required to do an environmental review. Part of development of this site will also include an in-depth hydrology analysis because it is in a floodplain and a floodway. So FEMA does get involved with the remapping of the water flow areas and floodplain areas. So there would be a fairly detailed analysis to ensure no flooding beyond what happens today on adjacent properties.
Okay, very good. And Sally had some questions about the public zoning and what the impact would be on neighboring properties such as the church. Would that be something that would be handled in a future staff report or environmental document?
Yeah, that level of analysis would be handled as we look farther into it. I know at the council meetings for the previous mini storage project submitted on this property, there were concerns that if you approve something that doesn't seem to be compatible with the neighborhood, that opens it up for other properties adjacent to develop, and there becomes a new compatibility beyond what the neighborhood exists at today. But that would all be analyzed if the project moves forward in greater detail.
Okay. And there was a question for the architect regarding the use of the workshop. Could we get either Francis or Locke to answer that question?
Yeah, it was going to be for private use.
So it would be used by those that are in the office co-op, or this would be used for just the mini storage properties?
It'd be used for the owner and the employees of the mini storage properties.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and bring this back to the DRC for further discussion and any kind of information that you can pass on to the applicant regarding the appearance, the landscaping, the wrought iron fence changes, the change in channel, the lot split, or other. Dwayne.
So I know we're supposed to be looking at this and we have a new design to look at. I did hear a couple of comments from people who are opposed to it that they remarked that although the design was much improved, they still felt it was incompatible, but they did signal that they found the design less offensive. So I think that that's meeting part of the criteria that we're here to look at. That's why I bring it up. So that's my opening comment anyway.
Dwayne, could you be more specific? Was there anything you liked or did not like about the design?
Oh, actually, I think the designs, I think it's really nice. I think one of the objections before was that there was going to be this monument style wall, and some people felt intimidated by that. Now we've opened it up with a really nice quality wrought iron, or actually aluminum fence, with lots of landscaping, so that it's going to be very buffered and not have any kind of opposing thing. I like how they straightened the creek out along that whole area there. I think that really looks nice, and I know I believe once that they get which really will be kind of a riparian zone that they'll plant with plants that are appropriate. I know that was part of the criteria before. I doubt if it's changed, because these are things that are obviously written in stone from the various government agencies. Realignment of the buildings is, I think, helpful. It does create less of an imposing structure. You can see through a little more. And then one thing about usage that caught my attention, because I was actually going to bring it up. I know in this town, it can be difficult for groups to find conference facilities. There are not very many of them, and some of them are not desirable. So if they're opening something like that, that's actually a good service to the community.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dwayne. Is there anybody else on the DRC that would like to comment? I can't see you, so I'm going to go ahead and let's go to Mark.
Okay, well, first of all, I like the design. I think the site plan is a much improvement. They've scaled it back a bit. I was thinking about what this place looks like in terms of storage facilities, and one of the unfortunate features of a typical storage building is they're very recognizable, because you see the orange doors as you're driving down the freeway, and you know exactly what it is. And I feel like this kind of gets away from that. That's a huge improvement. And the way the design is, I think I talked to Scott about this a while back, and encouraged that as you're driving past it from any angle, that you don't see those garage doors as much as you can, because that makes it look like the storage facility. I think it would be a great improvement to make it look like something else, so that way, I mean, if that's what the big problem is. But otherwise, I think the design is nice. I think that the design is appropriate for the area, and I like the way the site plan is. As far as the function of the facility, that's another story for city council. But as far as the design goes, I like the way it looks.
Okay, very good. Let's go to Emily. Did you have any comments?
Just to perhaps reiterate that I also like the design. I think for what it is, it's probably the best looking project I've seen, either built or not built, of this use. I tend to have a lot of concerns about the drainage channel, but as shown, fully landscaped, I think it would be an improvement to that situation. As also said previously by many other people, the use is a different conversation. And so I'm, holding comments to design only as best I can.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Heather Newsom, please.
Yes, I'd probably chime in with my other colleagues and say that I do appreciate the effort that they put in to add the additional landscaping. It is trying to allow it to blend in more with their neighborhood. I still, compatibility, don't think that it fits in that mold, but I do appreciate the time and the effort and the resources they've used to try to fit their surroundings.
Okay, thank you, Heather. And I'd like to chime in with my colleagues. I think this is an improvement over what we saw last time, that the mass is much less, it's much less intrusive into the environment with the block walls gone and with the proposed wrought iron type of fencing. The landscaping is a big plus as well. The realignment of the buildings was really much improved over what we saw before, and it's less intrusive. I like having the doors concealed from the street on all sides, and it is a good looking building, but we're not dealing with the land use, so that will go on to other people. So is there any additional comments that we want to give to the applicant? Last chance for the DRC.
I have nothing more to add.
Very good. Is the applicant clear on what we've told you?
Yes, thank you so much, Chair Fonzie. We have heard the comments, and we will huddle on that with the architect and the owner and talk about options. And one thing I do want to say about the drainage channel, I hope everyone realizes that that is something that, you know, an engineer has to do the calcs on for capacity. And I think one of the things that is a little disturbing when we get into the public hearing setting is that a lot of times we can't get past anecdotal stories about how it floods. We've all seen the videos. So the whole object here is to improve it so that we don't have those type of events. And it's not merely just a landscape feature. It has to have the proper carrying capacity as well. So, you know, for a variety of reasons, not just for all the neighborhood, but for Scott and his project as well, because we don't want to see a bunch of flooding occurring. So I hope that people can trust that the city's requirements with permitting and having real engineers that have PE after their name and professionals that actually have licenses on the line, that those type of things those are probably the least of anyone's worries.
Thank you. You make a good point, Ms. Romero.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Then we're going to close this and move on to other items. So we can go ahead and let them go, Luke, on the chats. I think we're done with public comment and we're moving on to committee member comments and reports. Anybody have any comments or reports?
None at this time for me, Roberta.
Okay, I don't see anybody raising their hands or making noise, so I'm going to assume that we do not. Director's report, do we have a schedule for our next DRC meeting?
Yeah, so just looking at that now, I seem to recall we have an item or two. Annette, do you have that, or Kelly, do you have that schedule in front of you there? I'm not able to pull the schedule up here. If we've got
July 15th would be the next date.
And what will we be covering, or do you know?
Do we have anything on that yet confirmed?
I don't think I saw anything on there just yet.
Okay, we've got some items that I know that we're going to go to Planning Commission. Maybe I'm thinking of that. So I don't know that we have any other items for DRC yet. I know that we were looking at a preliminary application for a mixed-use project downtown with commercial and residential. We haven't got that in yet. So I know that we do have a few things gelling, but they're just not quite ready yet. But I'm also here to answer any questions of the DRC if you have questions about ongoing development, because we have a lot of it right now. And there are a lot of projects that are proceeding forward.
Go ahead.
So Phil, I'm just a curiosity question, you know, with all of that's been going on and stuff like that, are we seeing some projects that are just really going to be put on hold, like we saw back in, say, 2008 and 9?
Not so much, not really. For the first month of COVID, yes. All of a sudden there was a big pause and a big shock factor. But now the development community is really moving forward and seeing this time as a time to build, knowing that projects take a year, sometimes 2 years to build out, and knowing that economies are cyclical. And obviously we're facing a significant economic impact right now, but everyone's confident with a significant economic recovery. And so building in a time like this, when you can't have businesses open, is almost the perfect time to build.
Right.
It's an unfortunate time to finish a project right now, such as the Hilton Hotel, but it's a great time to build. So all these projects like the microhome community, like the Emerald Ridge Apartments, like La Plaza downtown, and some other commercial and residential investments that we're seeing downtown are moving forward. And I think people are seeing this as an opportunity time to develop some of these things and to expand some of these things and to remodel some things while business is down, while things are different and slow. So it's very different than the 2008 recession, where we saw real estate and development drop off the map. It's not happening. It's not happening yet. And I'm hoping that that doesn't happen. So it's a different thing right now. Is there a bird there? Who's got the bird?
No, that's my bird.
Oh.
Okay, any other questions for staff regarding the ongoing projects? Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and adjourn. Thank you for your patience in the meeting.
Bye.
Thank
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.